Welcome to Raptorisms over Crystalis, episode 12. Where we last left off, I was trying to grind up to level 9 and also trying to grind up to over $9,000 so that I could buy the sacred shield from the Amazon village. Well, I'm just about at $9,000 right now, and I'd like to kill just one more treasure chest so I have some leeway in my wallet. And after that, we'll teleport to the Amazon village, get the sacred shield, and then finally head back over to the Angry Sea where we can actually get something done now that we're finally at level 9. And while we're going around the Angry Sea, let's talk about the two-part Indian movie series, Baahubali. Now we are at $9,699, so let's teleport away back to the Amazon village and we can finally get our shield. As you might recall from last time, men are not welcome in this village, but stores will still do business with us because they can't really afford to turn away customers. So let's get our shield, $9,000, and now we have one of the best shields in the game. So now let's head back to Brinemare, just a little walk away, and we can rest up, because right now we only have 17 magic points. After that, we'll teleport back to Joel, the town in the Angry Sea, and from there, we'll ride the dolphin over to the next island, which is going to have our next dungeon. Alright, so now let's get started talking about Baahubali. I saw both of these movies last year on DVD, and I swear I was gonna review it back then, but there was a bit of a change in plans. You see, the theme of my review was gonna be that Baahubali is basically a much better version of Black Panther. I was even planning to do one of those Virgin Chad memes where you have the Virgin Black Panther versus the Chad Baahubali. But then the Black Panther actor died, and it seemed like it would be in poor taste to go through with that, so I just put it off. Well, just recently, the 2021 Oscar ceremonies made a huge fuck up when they decided they were going to switch around the order of the awards at the last second because they were so sure that the Black Panther actor was going to win one of these awards posthumously, only he didn't, and in fact the person who won the award for Best Actor wasn't even there. So I'm taking that as a sign that it's at least relatively safe to be critical of Black Panther right now. Anyway, let's call over our dolphin and head over to Evil Spirit Island. Usually, the item I choose to equip is the rabbit boots. However, right now we're on water and so we can't jump around. Instead, I'll put on the shield ring. And as you can see right now with the Sword of Fire, I can finally kill enemies in the Angry Sea, so we are making progress. Let's try out some of the other swords just for kicks. Okay, the Sword of Water will do absolutely nothing. And the Sword of Wind, okay, this is actually causing damage. Let's see how many hits it'll take. Quite a few. And clearly the Sword of Fire is more efficient here, so let's put that back on and head over to Evil Spirit Island. Now, at the entrance is one of the tougher enemies over here. It doesn't actually move, but it does take a lot of hits. But as long as we kill this guy, we can get into the entrance to Evil Spirit Island, and there are a lot of really weak enemies that are actually pretty good for leveling up, but this time I chose to level up in a different area, so there's no pressing need to do that right now. Let's just wipe these guys out and move on to the maze. My goal for this video is just to figure out the maze, and once I do that, I can head back out, I can rest up, and when I come back here, I'll know exactly where I'm going. That'll help me get to the end of the maze, taking as few hits as possible, so when I get up to the boss, it'll be a relatively easy fight. Now, like I said, this is a really long maze, so for now, let's just talk about Baahubali as we work our way through it. I first heard about Baahubali from, of all things, the Hajime no Ippo manga. There was a scene when Ippo wanted to take Kumi to see a romantic movie, but instead they ended up watching the Indian war epic Baahubali. It was pretty funny at the time, but in retrospect, I wonder if the author had even seen Baahubali because there are some significant romantic elements to it. There's also a lot of singing and dancing, as is kind of typical in Indian movies, so I'm sure Kumi had a great time. Now as for myself, I have no interest in any of the singing and dancing, I'm just in it for the war epic. After Hajime no Ippo, I came across Baahubali in a few different settings, and I found out that it won some awards, and it was also available at my local DVD rental store, so I figured, let me give it a shot. I generally don't give a damn about Indian movies, but this one seems like it might actually be good. And that means a lot coming from me, because I'll generally go out of my way not to watch an Indian movie. First of all, I don't speak any Indian languages, so that's automatically one barrier to getting any enjoyment out of these movies. Second of all, when I was a kid, my parents would always watch Indian movies, so naturally I thought they were really uncool. And thirdly, from what little I'd seen of Indian movies, the production values were much lower than Hollywood, so why even bother watching them? My interest in Indian movies was basically limited to religious epics and fight scenes. I know that religious epics might sound kinda lame, but they're basically just Baahubali except 100 episodes long. The old school Baka-Raptor series, for example, is amazing, and at some point I'm going to make a video about that, and if I really wanted my channel to take off overnight, I could just review every single episode of the old Baka-Raptor, and I would have 1 million followers in no time. Now, as far as modern Indian movies are concerned, I'm not really interested in anything other than the fight scenes, and my parents would often watch these movies on rental tape when I was a kid, so if there was a fight scene, I would have them call me over, I'd watch that, and after that was over, I'd go right back to whatever I was doing before. Long story short, to get me to watch an Indian movie of my own free will, the bar is pretty high. But for some reason, I decided to watch Baahubali, and that decision paid off. These are some great movies. Baahubali is basically the story of a kid who was forced into hiding because his uncle illegitimately stole the throne, and once he grows up, he decides to come back and kick his uncle's ass. It's a story with timeless appeal. You can call it Hamlet or The Lion King or Black Panther or Game of Thrones. Pretty much anyone's going to enjoy a story about revenge and a battle over the throne. The story is told in medias res, which is one of my favorite storytelling techniques. It means that the story chronologically starts in the middle, then flashes back to the beginning, and then finally jumps forward to the end. The backstory is about half of the movie series, if not more, and it tells the story about the main character's father, who was the rightful heir to the throne, and what brought about his demise. I would say that this backstory is the most interesting part of the movie. Aside from the excellent story, there are some cool fight scenes, and the main characters, both the son and the father, are incredibly manly. And yes, I know they sing and dance, but aside from that, they are textbook old school men when it comes to strength, intelligence, and honor. Now let's move on to criticisms, of which I do have a few. First of all, like I said, there is some singing and dancing, and there's not so much, but still, I'd rather not have any at all. Second of all, some of the CG is pretty ugly, at least by Hollywood standards, although for Indian standards, it's probably the best I've seen. Third of all, some of the moralizing in these movies is really in your face and over the top. That's not to say it's necessarily bad, I mean it can still be kind of fun in a campy way, but if you're gonna moralize in a movie, I say keep it subtle. Fourth of all, this story blatantly ripped off elements from classic religious works. There were several elements that were copied straight out of the Mahabharata, and I get it, it's inspirational, but still, write your own story. A huge criticism I had of classical English literature that I had to read in high school is that it was crammed full of biblical allusions. If I'm gonna criticize those works, I have to criticize Baahubali for doing the exact same thing. My final criticism of this movie is that there's some points where feminism is thrown in and it gets kind of annoying. It's the kind of thing you see all over Western movies these days, and you'd like to think it hasn't creeped its way over to the East, but it appears that ship has already sailed. On the bright side, it hasn't gotten to the point of fat acceptance, at least not yet. All things considered, the criticisms I listed aren't going to keep you from liking this movie, but they will stand out, at least because in some ways they're so different from Western movies, and in other ways they are so similar. My final grade for this 2-part movie series is a triple plus. It is that good. And there are some spin-offs, but I haven't watched those because I can't imagine those living up to the originals. If you've seen any of the spin-offs and you think they're worth watching, let me know and maybe I'll check them out. But now let's take one last look at the game. I'm probably going to end the video pretty soon because we're still in the middle of this maze and there's no end in sight. However, we did just enter a pretty interesting area. First of all, there's this dragon that's pretty easy to kill, so let's take care of him and get that out of the way. Second of all, there are 2 treasure chests up here. This one is a fake, and as we saw before, you can kill these guys and get a lot of money off them. What makes this location particularly good for farming these guys is that aside from that one dragon, there's no other enemy here. In the area where I was fighting treasure chests previously, there were a lot of other enemies like bats and mushrooms, but here there are no other distractions, so you're probably not going to take much damage. Just take care of this one dragon and it's smooth sailing. Now let's take care of this fake treasure chest so we can head across the river to get to the real one. The treasure chest across the river is going to contain another accessory. So far we have the shield ring, which, when equipped, boosts the power of your shield. Here we're going to get an accessory that does basically the same thing, except instead of boosting your shield power, it's going to boost the power of your armor. And it's called the Iron Necklace. Let's try it on. So let's take off the rabbit boots and instead put on the iron necklace, and our defense stats are going to be 34-26. The first one being the armor, the second one being the shield. Now with the shield ring, it's 24-36, so basically the opposite depending on which one we use. But as usual when I'm on land, I prefer having the mobility of the rabbit boots. That's all for now. In the next video, we'll make it to the end of this maze.